An old man once raised a cute little creature, but 10 years later it grew into a gigantic, merciless monster that now devours everyone in its path. What's up, everyone? Today on Film Decoded, we're uncovering the entire story of Monstrum, a movie packed with twists and surprises. But before we begin, don't forget to leave a like so you never miss more incredible videos like this one. Now, without wasting any time, let's jump right into the recap. In the year 1506, King Jungjong was overthrown during a rebellion led by Jungjong and his followers. After taking the throne, the new ruler crushed all remaining resistance and tightened his control over the population. During this dark period, a terrible plague began spreading throughout the kingdom of Joseon. The new king ordered his army to exterminate anyone suspected of being infected. Poor villagers were dragged into deep pits and slaughtered mercilessly. One desperate woman begs the soldiers to spare her healthy daughter, but she is shot in the back with an arrow. The little girl survives and desperately tries to wake her mother among the countless corpses. After the screams inside the pit finally stop, a man climbs down and rescues the girl. As night falls, Jungjong hears rumors about monsters appearing in the mountains near the massacre site. The creatures are allegedly attacking civilians, spreading fear among the population, and that fear could threaten the king's authority. Forced to act, the king prepares drastic measures. Meanwhile, deep in the forest, Jungjong lives a quiet life alongside his friend Sung-han and his adopted daughter Myung. The three are searching for food but return empty-handed after failing to hunt anything. Myung tries convincing her father to move closer to the palace where food is easier to find and life would be less isolated. But Jungjong refuses once again and asks her to gather vegetables from the garden instead. At that moment, a mysterious stranger arrives outside their home and spies through the windows. Myung quickly grabs her bow and points it at the stranger's back, demanding he identify himself. The man introduces himself as Hyo and claims he came looking for the warrior who once served the king. Confused, Myung insists her father is nothing more than a humble farmer. Suddenly, Sung-han startles her by accident, causing Myung to fire the arrow. The stranger effortlessly dodges it with incredible skill, and for a brief moment, a romantic tension forms between them. Jungjong then steps outside, and Hyo explains that he came under orders from King Jungjong himself. Myung is shocked to discover that her father was once one of the king's greatest royal guards. However, Jungjong has no interest in serving the king again and tells Hyo to leave immediately. Unexpectedly, the king himself suddenly arrives, forcing everyone to bow before royalty. During the meeting, the king recalls the tragic events from 10 years earlier when Jungjong arrived at the palace carrying a little girl in his arms to prove she was not infected. Back then, Jungjong openly condemned the king for the brutal massacre of innocent civilians. According to him, the plague had already disappeared and the king slaughtered his own people for no reason. The royal guards immediately drew their swords to defend the king, but one man refused to attack Jungjong. In the end, the king spared the lives of the soldiers and the little girl, but banished them from the kingdom. Now, years later, Jungjong seeks Jungjong's help once again. He speaks of a horrifying monster that is spreading disease and tearing civilians apart. The king returns Jungjong's old battle sword and asks him to protect the kingdom one more time. After spending the entire night thinking about it, Jungjong finally agrees. Meanwhile, shamans perform a ritual to cleanse the land from the terrifying creature. But during the ceremony, the women are suddenly attacked by the very same monster. The river water turns red with blood as proof of the beast's brutality. A young girl witnesses the massacre and barely escapes alive. When Jungjong and his family arrive at Hanyang, they are shocked by the condition of the capital. The city is in ruins, and most citizens can barely survive. Soon after, the king orders Jungjong to investigate the massacre near the river. At the crime scene, they discover mutilated merchants with missing limbs. While examining the bodies, Jungjong notices strange rope marks around the victims' ankles. He questions the little girl who witnessed the attack, but something feels strange. She describes the monster calmly, without fear. Suspicious, Jungjong secretly follows her and notices a hooded man handing her a bag before quickly riding away on horseback. The group follows the girl to a small shelter where she distributes food to starving children from the same bag. The girl finally admits she lied about seeing the monster in exchange for food. Because of the monster rumors, people are too terrified to leave their homes and work, causing widespread starvation. Although she never actually saw the creature, she believes it truly exists. Elsewhere, another brutal attack occurs in the mountains. The investigation team discovers strange knife wounds and large blisters covering the victims' bodies. One corpse is found hanging impossibly high in a tree, something no human could have done. After examining the bodies, Yoon Jae-im reports back to the king. He concludes that the victims were attacked by humans, not a monster. Someone intentionally used blades to imitate a beast attack. However, all the victims were also infected by a mysterious disease. To test it, they expose a rat to one of the corpses. Within hours, the animal becomes covered in sores and dies. Determined to uncover the truth, Yoon Jae-im accepts command of a royal search party sent to hunt the monster. The cautious authorities only provide a small number of soldiers and order them to recruit peasants as volunteers. As guards force villagers into joining the expedition, only women and children remain in the city. Yoon Jae-im soon discovers that Myung disguised herself as a guard to secretly join the mission. The captain orders her to stay behind, but she refuses. Eventually, she convinces them to let her come along. As the sound of drums echoes through the city, the search party heads into the mountains. They thoroughly investigate the forest but discover nothing suspicious except for strange pink liquid dripping from tree branches. Yoon Jae-im suggests ending the search before nightfall, but the royal commander insists they continue since the monster supposedly hunts at night. Myung points out something strange. They have not seen a single human bone anywhere in the mountains, meaning the creature might actually be starving. Despite her concerns, the group splits into teams and continues searching. Meanwhile, back at the palace, the king tells his advisor he believes the monster is merely a rumor created to weaken the government. He plans to announce to the people that no monster exists so trust in the authorities can be restored. As night falls, the expedition encounters its first disaster. An elderly volunteer wanders away from the group and accidentally heads toward a dangerous cliff. Following him, Sung Han discovers fresh traces of red fluid covering the rocks. Moments later, Yoon Jae-im and the others arrive. Myung suddenly feels that the location seems strangely familiar, as if she has seen it before. She calls everyone over and points at a gigantic footprint pressed deep into the ground. While the volunteers gather near the cliff, Commander Jin secretly orders his soldiers to murder all the peasants in the group. After the massacre begins, he sends several soldiers back to the palace. Suddenly, the group notices a flare signal lighting up the sky, supposedly indicating the monster's location. But when they arrive, the volunteers are ambushed with arrows. Jin's soldiers mercilessly slaughter the peasants. Sung Han fights back against the guards while Myung protects Yoon Jae-im from an incoming arrow, taking the hit in her arm instead. In the end, only Yoon Jae-im, Sung Han, Myung, and Hyo remain alive. Surrounded by dozens of soldiers, they seem doomed. Then suddenly, another arrow flies toward Hyo, but Sung Han jumps in front of him and takes the shot instead. Although wounded, Hyo survives and is captured alongside Sung Han. Yoon Jae-im and Myung are also tied up by the soldiers. Commander Jin finally reveals the horrifying truth. There was never any monster. For years, the kingdom's soldiers have been slaughtering innocent peasants to keep the population afraid and obedient. 10 years earlier, the exact same monster rumors helped Jungjong seize power. Hearing this, Myung begins remembering the traumatic events from her childhood massacre. Enraged, Yoon Jae-im swears revenge against the men who abused his daughter, but Jin knocks him unconscious. Jin then orders his men to execute the remaining survivors and make it look like another monster attack. Just as the soldiers prepare to fire their arrows, a terrifying growl echoes from the darkness below. A gigantic claw suddenly rises over the cliff. Within seconds, a monstrous creature climbs onto the rocks and tears one of the soldiers apart. The guards are finally confronted by the real monster. Covered in wounds and horrifying blisters, the creature attacks with unstoppable fury. Terrified, Jin orders the soldiers to fire arrows, but the monster is completely unfazed. The beast leaps into the soldiers, scattering them in panic. While the creature hunts the guards, Sung Han and Hyo free themselves and escape down the cliff. They rescue Yoon Jae-im and help him recover. Suddenly, the elderly volunteer who disappeared earlier reappears. He warns them to cover themselves in the monster's slime to avoid infection and hide their human scent. The old man extinguishes all the torches and orders everyone to remain completely still. The monster has terrible eyesight but reacts violently to movement. The strategy works. The beast approaches Myung but fails to notice the group. As it devours human remains, the creature suddenly spits flesh directly onto Myung's face. After some time, the exhausted monster falls asleep, allowing the survivors to hide inside a nearby cave. Unfortunately, at the last moment, the monster catches Myung's scent and begins chasing them through the cave system. The group barely escapes being devoured alive. The cave eventually ends at a cliff, leaving them no choice but to jump into the water below. Meanwhile, Jin and several soldiers successfully return to the palace alive. He informs the Prime Minister that the monster is real. In truth, Jin himself orchestrated the previous murders while pretending the monster was responsible. Using fear to manipulate the king, he secretly influenced every royal decision. Now that the monster truly exists, the Prime Minister fears the population may revolt against the government. He orders soldiers to suppress any resistance while preparing to seize the throne for himself. Soon after, infected members of the search party return to the city covered in horrifying blisters. Panic spreads instantly. Terrified citizens fear another plague outbreak while soldiers begin burning houses with people trapped inside. Meanwhile, the old man secretly guides Yoon Jae-im's group into the palace through underground tunnels. Deep beneath the castle, they discover giant cages hidden in a massive chamber. The old man reveals a shocking secret. The former king of Joseon was obsessed with monsters and kept many of them imprisoned beneath the castle. When he was younger, the old servant was responsible for feeding the creatures and eventually became emotionally attached to one of them. After Jungjong overthrew the king, he ordered every monster killed. Wanting to save the creature he cared for, the servant secretly helped it escape through hidden tunnels. But after the creature later consumed a plague-infected corpse, it transformed into the horrifying monster they know today. Suddenly, the creature enters the tunnels. Realizing there is no escape, the old servant sacrifices himself. Using an old toy, he lures the giant monster into a cage and locks himself inside with it. The creature stares at him with rage before brutally tearing him apart. After escaping the cage, the monster resumes hunting the survivors. At the same time, the Prime Minister gives a speech to the citizens, promising to protect the injured and shelter those who lost their homes. The desperate people praise him, believing he is saving them from another plague. Yoon Jae-im's group finally reaches the king's chambers and reveals the truth. The monster is real and was created inside the castle itself. But before anything else can happen, the Prime Minister storms in with armed guards and attacks the king. The rebels seize control of the palace and kill the royal guards. Yoon Jae-im and his companions are taken hostage. The Prime Minister plans to blame them for burning the capital since the people have already lost faith in the king. Just as the execution is about to begin, the monster suddenly bursts out from the basement. The soldiers try fighting back, but the creature tears through them effortlessly. Meanwhile, Myung pretends to suffer from terrible itching caused by the plague, distracting the guards long enough for the prisoners to secretly free themselves. Taking advantage of the chaos, they escape. The Prime Minister orders every soldier in the kingdom to kill the monster. Using massive chains and ropes, the guards finally manage to restrain the beast. The wounded king is secretly moved to safety by his loyal servants. The Prime Minister then announces that the monster will be dragged outside the palace and publicly executed before the people. But the creature suddenly breaks free once again. Its red infected fluid splashes across the soldiers, instantly covering their bodies in disease and horrifying wounds. Terrified, the Prime Minister and the remaining guards flee. When the heroes regroup, they prepare a final trap for the monster inside the castle basement. Despite everyone's protests, Yoon Jae-im volunteers to act as bait. Meanwhile, terrified citizens storm the palace demanding answers. Myung exposes the Prime Minister's lies and reveals that the monster is inside the castle. Enraged, the people drag the Prime Minister into the palace with farming tools and lock the gates behind him, leaving him to be devoured. Yoon Jae-im fires signal flares into the sky to lure the creature toward the basement. At the same time, Sung-han prepares explosives underground. Suddenly, Commander Jin, now horribly infected and covered in wounds, appears seeking revenge. A brutal duel begins. During the fight, Hyo stabs Jin with his sword, but the villain refuses to give up. Myung rushes to help and fires an arrow toward Jin, but he uses Hyo as a human shield. Thinking quickly, Myung tells Hyo to repeat the exact same movement they made when they first met. The plan works perfectly, allowing Hyo to knock Jin down. Moments later, Yoon Jae-im runs into the basement with the monster chasing directly behind him. The group lights the explosive fuse and begins escaping. But before leaving, Yoon Jae-im realizes the flame has gone out. In a heroic act, he pushes Sung-han out of the basement and asks him to take care of Myung. Then he locks himself inside with the monster and throws his torch into the explosives. a massive explosion shakes the entire castle. When Myung realizes her father was still inside, she breaks down in despair. As morning arrives, rain begins washing away the blood and bodies left behind. The monster has finally been defeated. Still refusing to lose hope, Myung searches desperately through the rubble for her father. Suddenly, she hears movement beneath the debris. To everyone's shock, Yoon Jae-im is still alive. The survivors quickly pull the hero from the ruins and celebrate their victory. Afterward, Myung remains at the palace alongside Hyo, while Yoon Jae-im and Sung Han return home to resume their peaceful lives in the countryside. On the journey back, Sung Han asks Yoon Jae-im how he survived the explosion. Yoon Jae-im reveals that at the last possible second, he tied himself to a rope and launched himself upward before the blast. And that brings us to the end of another recap. Fun fact, this story was actually inspired by historical records written during the Joseon era, and some people genuinely believe the events may have really happened. Thanks for watching Film Decoded, and I'll see you in the next recap.